She boarded the plane wearing a simple tan hoodie, hoping to blend in. To the world, she was just another sleepy traveler trying to get home. But beneath that quiet surface lived one of the country's most elite protectors, trained to spot danger before it unfolded, to act without being seen. What she didn't expect was that the threat wouldn't come from a weapon or a terrorist, but from the woman pouring drinks in first class. With every small insult, every denied service, tension simmered. And just when humiliation reached its peak, the entire cabin learned a secret that flipped the flight upside down. Before we dive in, what city are you tuning in from today? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing how far these stories travel. This one takes an unexpected turn that's honestly unforgettable. If you're into powerful moments and justice served cold, hit that subscribe button now. Tayana Brooks rubbed her tired eyes as she waited to board her flight. 3 years in the Secret Service's elite Presidential Protection Division had taught her how to function on minimal sleep. But today, the exhaustion felt bone deep. Just get through this flight, she whispered to herself. Then you can sleep. The gate agent called her group, and Tayana stood, shouldering her small backpack. She wore a simple tan hoodie and jeans, comfortable clothes for the 5-hour journey. Nothing about her appearance suggested she was anything other than an ordinary passenger. That was exactly the point. As she moved toward the gate, her phone buzzed. A text from her supervisor. Brief change of plans. Asset will be seated in 3C. Remain inconspicuous. Observe only. Tayana's fatigue vanished instantly. What she thought would be a routine flight to join her security team had just become an active assignment. Someone important would be on this plane, someone who needed protection without knowing they were being protected. She texted back a quick confirmation and boarded the plane with heightened awareness. The cabin was half full when Tayana found her first-class seat, 4B, directly behind where her asset would be sitting. Her training kicked in automatically. She scanned faces, noted exits, identified potential threats or allies. Most passengers barely glanced at her as they settled in with their devices and magazines. A flight attendant with a tight blonde bun and crisp uniform approached. The name tag read, Karen Winters. "Excuse me," Karen said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I think you might be in the wrong section." "This is first class." Tayana met her gaze calmly. "Yes, I know. 4B is my assigned seat." Karen's smile tightened. "May I see your boarding pass, please?" Tayana handed it over without comment, noting how Karen had welcomed the white businessman across the aisle without checking his credentials. "Oh," Karen said, sounding oddly disappointed as she returned the pass. "Very well." As Karen moved away, Tayana observed a well-dressed older man being escorted to seat 3C by another flight attendant. Senator Harrison. Now she understood the senator had received threats recently, and her job was to keep an invisible perimeter. The plane filled quickly. A young white woman took the seat beside Tayana, smiling politely before returning to her phone. Tayana cataloged everything. The air marshal poorly disguised in 7A, the nervous-looking man in 12D, the flight crew's movements. Karen returned with pre-flight drinks for first class. She served everyone in Tayana's row except her. "Excuse me," Tayana said politely. "Can I have a water, please?" Karen turned, blinking as if she'd somehow not seen Tayana. "Oh, of course." When she returned with the water, she placed it on Tayana's tray without meeting her eyes, then spent extra time chatting warmly with a passenger beside her. Tayana took a slow sip, her face revealing nothing. This wasn't her first experience with this particular brand of treatment. As one of few black women in the Secret Service, she'd learned to choose her battles carefully. Today's battle was ensuring Senator Harrison's safety. Everything else was background noise. The captain announced their departure. As the plane taxied, Tayana caught Karen watching her with an unreadable expression. Something in that look raised Tayana's internal warning system, the same instinct that had helped her spot a concealed weapon at a presidential event last year. This flight wouldn't be as routine as she'd hoped. The plane lifted into the air, and Tayana settled back, appearing relaxed while remaining vigilant. Years of training had taught her to be invisible while seeing everything. She was good at her job, one of the best, according to her last performance review. No one on this plane knew who she really was. And that was exactly how it needed to be. For now, 30 minutes into the flight, Tayana noticed a pattern. Karen Winters had returned to the first-class cabin multiple times, offering drinks, warm towels, and snacks to everyone except her. It was so deliberate, it was almost comical. Tayana might have ignored it entirely if staying hydrated weren't essential for the job. She pressed the call button. Karen arrived with visible reluctance. Yes. Could I please have some water? Tayana asked, her voice professional. We are in the middle of serving the main cabin, Karen replied, reaching up to switch off the call button. I'll get to you when we're finished. 20 minutes passed. The white woman beside Tayana received a fresh drink without asking. Senator Harrison in front of her was treated like royalty. Tayana pressed the call button again. Karen returned, her smile strained. Yes. I pressed for water 20 minutes ago, Tayana said quietly, aware of nearby passengers. I'd still like some, please. Something flashed across Karen's face. Of course. Right away. When Karen returned, she seemed to stumble slightly. Cold water splashed across Tayana's lap. Oh. Karen exclaimed, not sounding particularly sorry. Let me get you some napkins. She dropped 3 small cocktail napkins onto Tayana's now-soaked jeans and walked away. The woman next to Tayana looked uncomfortable. That didn't seem like an accident, she whispered. Tayana dabbed at her jeans. It rarely is. Her seatmate introduced herself as Jasmine. I'm a social media manager. I notice these things. Want me to say something? I appreciate that, Tayana said. But I've got this. Tayana pressed the call button again. This time, a different flight attendant responded, a younger man named Tyler. Could I speak to your lead flight attendant? Tayana asked. Tyler looked nervous. Karen is our purser for this flight. Is there something I can help with? I need to report an ongoing service issue, Tayana said, keeping her voice low but firm. Tyler nodded. I'll get her for you. Karen appeared moments later, hands clasped in front of her. You wanted to speak with me? Her tone suggested Tayana was causing trouble. Yes. I'd like to formally note that I've experienced discriminatory service since boarding. I've been repeatedly overlooked for basic service, and then had water dumped on me. Karen's face hardened. I apologize if you feel that way, but I assure you, no discrimination occurred. The spill was an accident. I'd like your employee ID for my report, Tayana said. Report. Karen's voice rose slightly. I'm trying to serve an entire cabin. If you continue to be disruptive, I'll have to inform the captain. Senator Harrison turned slightly in his seat, now aware of the tension behind him. Is everything okay back there? He asked. Perfectly fine, Senator, Karen said sweetly. Just a small misunderstanding. She turned back to Tayana, leaning closer. Look, I don't know what your problem is, but this needs to stop. I have a job to do. So do I, Tayana replied calmly. And right now, you're interfering with it. Karen straightened. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Karen walked away, whispering something to Tyler, who glanced back at Tayana with newfound suspicion. Jasmine leaned over. That took guts. She's been awful to you. Tayana shrugged. Sometimes standing your ground is necessary. What Tayana couldn't say was that her Secret Service training included dealing with hostile situations without escalation. Karen's behavior was textbook intimidation, something Tayana had studied extensively. From the corner of her eye, Tayana noticed the nervous man from 12D getting up and moving toward the front lavatory, directly past the senator. She tensed, ready to move if necessary. The man passed without incident, but Tayana noticed him glancing at the senator with too much interest. Meanwhile, Karen had gathered 2 other flight attendants in the galley. They kept looking in Tayana's direction. They're talking about you, Jasmine whispered. I know, Tayana replied. That's okay. What wasn't okay was how this situation was escalating, potentially compromising her ability to remain inconspicuous. If Karen forced a confrontation, Tayana's cover might be blown, putting her asset at risk. The plane hit turbulence, and the seatbelt sign dinged on. Karen emerged from the galley with a determined expression, a cup of water in her hand. Something in her walk told Tayana this wouldn't end well. Karen stopped beside Tayana's seat, water cup in hand. Her smile was cold. "I thought you might still be thirsty," she said loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. Tayana's instincts flared. She subtly shifted her body, but before she could respond, Karen lost her balance as the plane hit another patch of turbulence. Cold water cascaded over Tayana's head, soaking her face, hoodie, and lap. The shock of it, the deliberate nature of the act, froze the entire cabin in stunned silence. "Oh my God," gasped Jasmine beside her. Tayana didn't move. With water dripping down her face, she closed her eyes and controlled her breathing, the same technique she used during high-stress protection details. One breath in, one breath out. "I'm so sorry," Karen announced, her voice carrying through the cabin. "The turbulence is quite bad. Let me get you some napkins." She walked away without providing any. The silence broke as passengers began whispering. Someone in the row behind let out a shocked, "What the hell was that?" Tayana remained still, water trickling down her face, weighing her options. Making a scene would compromise her mission. Doing nothing would embolden Karen further. Jasmine thrust a pack of tissues toward her. That was deliberate. "I can't believe she did that." Tayana finally opened her eyes, taking the tissues with a quiet, "Thank you." As she dabbed her face, she noticed Senator Harrison had turned around fully now, watching with concern. "Are you all right, miss?" he asked. The situation was now affecting her asset, exactly what she'd hoped to avoid. "I'm fine, Senator," she replied calmly. "Please don't worry yourself." The senator's eyebrows rose slightly at her composed response, but he nodded and turned back around. Tayana pulled her phone from her pocket. Water droplets speckled the screen as she typed a brief, encrypted message to her supervisor. Cover potentially compromised. Flight attendant creating scene. Advise. Jasmine was still staring in shock. "You're not going to let her get away with that, are you?" "I'm going to handle it appropriately," Tayana replied. Her phone buzzed with a response. "Maintain cover if possible. Asset safety priority. Document incident." Tayana noticed several passengers were already doing just that. Phones pointed in her direction, recording what had happened. The public humiliation was being captured from multiple angles. Karen returned with the male flight attendant, Tyler. They spoke in hushed tones while looking in Tayana's direction. "I've never seen anything like this," Jasmine whispered. "I travel all the time, and this is discrimination," Tayana finished simply. "And it happens every day." The air marshal in 7A was now watching the situation carefully. Tayana caught his eye briefly, recognizing the subtle way he assessed the cabin, similar to her own techniques. Tyler approached Tayana's seat, looking uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I need to ask you to keep your voice down. Other passengers have complained about the disruption." Tayana looked at him steadily. "I haven't spoken loudly once during this flight. I've been subjected to repeated harassment by your colleague, culminating in her pouring water over me. And now you're asking me to keep my voice down?" Tyler shifted his weight. "That's not. I mean, Karen said you've been confrontational and making accusations." "I'm making observations, not accusations," Tayana corrected. "And I'd like to speak to the captain." "The captain is flying the aircraft," Tyler said. "Karen is the lead flight attendant. Any issues need to go through her, even when she's the problem." Jasmine interjected. Tyler glanced at Jasmine, then back to Tayana. "I'll see what I can do." As he walked away, Tayana noticed the nervous man from 12D was up again, moving toward the front. His hand kept touching his jacket pocket. Her focus immediately shifted from her own situation to this potential threat. Karen's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some turbulence. Please remain in your seats with seatbelts fastened." The nervous man hesitated, then returned to his seat. Tayana made a mental note to watch him carefully for the remainder of the flight. Karen walked through the cabin, stopping beside Tayana again. "I've spoken with the captain. When we land, you'll be met by airport security to discuss your disruptive behavior." Tayana met her gaze calmly. "I look forward to it." The threat was clear. Karen was trying to have her removed from the flight. Normally, Tayana would simply identify herself to end such nonsense, but her mission parameters were explicit. Remain undercover, protect the asset. As Karen walked away, Tayana's phone buzzed again. A message from her supervisor, backup team alerted at destination. Proceed as civilian until landing. Tayana tucked her phone away and settled back in her seat, still damp from the water. She maintained her dignified silence even as whispers spread through the cabin. This would end, but not yet. Not until her asset was safe. For the next hour, the tension in the first-class cabin grew thicker than the clouds outside. Karen made a point of providing exceptional service to everyone around Tayana while completely ignoring her. More troubling was how the nervous man from 12D had made 3 more trips toward the front, each time finding an excuse to pass by Senator Harrison's seat. Tayana sent another discreet message to her team about the potential security concern. "You're soaking wet and she hasn't even offered you a blanket," Jasmine whispered, her outrage growing by the minute. "It's fine," Tayana said, though her clothes were uncomfortably damp and cold. "We land in 40 minutes. It's not fine. Look, I've been recording this whole thing." Jasmine showed Tayana her phone. "My TikTok has over 1 million followers. Say the word and this goes viral." Tayana shook her head slightly. "Not yet. You keep saying that like you're waiting for something," Jasmine observed. Tayana just smiled. Years of Secret Service training had taught her patience. Every interaction was a chess match, and she was thinking 3 moves ahead. The plane began its initial descent. Karen announced they would be landing soon and asked flight attendants to prepare the cabin. She walked through the aisle checking seatbelts, stopping at Tayana's row with a smirk. "Your seatbelt needs to be fastened," she said, as if Tayana, whose belt had been buckled the entire time, was a child. "It is fastened," Tayana replied evenly. "Well, make sure it stays that way." Karen leaned closer. "And just so you know, security will be escorting you off first. We've had enough of your attitude." Before Tayana could respond, a commotion erupted several rows back. The nervous man she'd been watching had stood up during the descent. "I need to talk to him," he shouted, pointing towards Senator Harrison. "He needs to hear what I have to say." This was the situation Tayana had been monitoring for. In one fluid motion, she unbuckled her belt and stood, positioning herself between the approaching man and the senator. "Sir, please return to your seat," she said, her voice shifting into the authoritative tone she used on protection details. The man looked startled at her sudden appearance in his path. "Who are you?" "I just need to talk to the senator." "Not happening," Tayana said firmly. "Return to your seat now." Karen rushed forward. "Ma'am, you need to sit down immediately. You're interfering with flight crew duties." The air marshal had also risen, moving toward them. "This passenger is approaching a federal official in a threatening manner," Tayana explained to the air marshal, never taking her eyes off the nervous man. "I'm asking him to return to his seat." The air marshal looked confused by her knowledge and tone. "Ma'am, I'll handle this. Please return to your seat." Karen triumphantly grabbed Tayana's arm. "You're in serious trouble now. Sit down." Tayana didn't move, her eyes still locked on the potential threat. "Sir," she addressed the nervous man directly, "I work for the United States Secret Service. Whatever message you have for the senator can be delivered through proper channels after we land." The cabin went silent. The nervous man blinked rapidly, his mouth opening and closing without words. Karen's grip on Tayana's arm loosened. "What did you just say?" The air marshal stepped closer. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see some identification." Finally, Tayana reached into her still damp hoodie pocket and pulled out a leather wallet. She flipped it open to reveal her Secret Service credentials and badge. "Special Agent Tayana Brooks, Presidential Protection Division," she said calmly. "I'm currently on protective detail." The air marshal examined her credentials carefully, then straightened to attention. "I apologize, Agent Brooks. I wasn't informed about your presence on board." "That was intentional," Tayana replied. Turning to the nervous man, she asked, "Do you have something you need to tell the senator that couldn't wait until land?" The man swallowed hard. "I just wanted to give him this letter about veteran health care. My brother died waiting for treatment." Tayana's expression softened slightly. "I understand. I'll make sure he receives it, but approaching public officials on aircraft isn't acceptable. Please return to your seat. As the man retreated, Tayana turned to face Karen, whose face had drained of all color. You can't be. Karen stammered. But I am, Tayana replied simply. And now we have a problem, don't we? The air marshal turned to Karen. I'll need your full name and employee ID number. What? Why? Karen's voice rose in panic. I was just doing my job. Your job includes pouring water on passengers? Jasmine challenged, holding up her phone. I have it all on video. Senator Harrison stood up now, finally understanding what was happening. Agent Brooks, were you assigned to me today? Tayana nodded professionally. Yes, Senator. We received information about a nonspecific threat. I was tasked with maintaining discreet surveillance. And this flight attendant, the senator began, repeatedly harassed and humiliated a federal agent in the performance of her duties. The air marshal finished. That's a serious federal offense. The plane was descending rapidly now. Everyone had returned to their seats except Tayana, Karen, and the air marshal. We'll continue this conversation on the ground, the air marshal said. For now, everyone please be seated for landing. As Tayana returned to her seat, soaked clothes clinging uncomfortably to her skin, she caught glimpses of passengers' shocked expressions. Some looked embarrassed, others satisfied at the turn of events. Jasmine leaned over, whispering excitedly, That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. You're a Secret Service agent. For real. Tayana buckled her seatbelt. For real. And you just sat there while she poured water on you? The mission comes first, Tayana said simply. Always. As the plane touched down, Tayana felt her phone buzz with another message from her supervisor. Situation report? She typed back, asset secure. Cover compromised due to separate security concern. Stand by for full debrief. The plane taxied to the gate, and Tayana noted with satisfaction that airport security and two people she recognized from her field office were waiting on the jetway. This time, she would be the first one off the plane, but not for the reasons Karen had intended. The moment the aircraft door opened, two suited agents stepped aboard. Their faces remained professional, but Tayana caught the flash of anger in their eyes when they saw her damp clothes. Agent Brooks, the taller one said with a nod. Agent Michaels, she replied. Situation contained. Senator is unharmed. Karen stood frozen by the galley, her face ashen as she watched the exchange. The realization of what she'd done, who she'd done it to, was finally sinking in. Airport security officers followed the agents onto the plane. The lead officer spoke quietly with the air marshal, who pointed toward Karen. Ms. Winters, the officer said, we need you to come with us. Karen's voice trembled. Am I being arrested? We have some questions about an incident that occurred during this flight, the officer replied. Please come with us. As Karen was escorted off the plane, passengers began to murmur and point. Several held up phones, recording the moment. Tayana stayed focused on her primary duty. She approached Senator Harrison, who stood waiting near his seat. Senator, your security detail is waiting in the terminal. I'll escort you. Harrison nodded, studying her with new respect. Agent Brooks, I want to apologize for what happened to you on this flight. No apology necessary, sir. I was doing my job. Well, your professionalism is commendable. I witnessed that flight attendant's behavior. I should have said something sooner. Tayana offered a small smile. With respect, Senator, drawing attention to the situation would have complicated my assignment. As they moved toward the exit, Jasmine called out, Tayana. Agent Brooks. Tayana turned. Yes. The video. Do you want me to post it? Jasmine asked, holding up her phone. Tayana considered for a moment. That's your decision. But perhaps wait until you hear the whole story. In the jetway, more agents waited to take over the senator's protection. Tayana provided a quick briefing, then stepped aside as they escorted him away. Agent Michaels remained with her. You all right, Brooks? You look like you went swimming in your clothes. I've had better flights, she admitted. Where are they taking Winters? Airport security office. FAA will want statements, and the airline's executive team is already scrambling. Apparently, the whole incident is trending online. Multiple passengers uploaded videos. Tayana wasn't surprised. What's next? Dry clothes, Michael said firmly. Then debrief. In the terminal, curious onlookers watched as Tayana was escorted through the airport. Her damp hoodie and the two suited agents beside her created a strange spectacle. At the security office, Tayana found Karen sitting alone in a conference room, hands clasped tightly in front of her. When Tayana entered, Karen couldn't meet her eyes. Agent Brooks, a man in an expensive suit, said, stepping forward. I'm Richard Coleman, Chief Operating Officer for Atlantic Airways. I can't begin to express how deeply sorry we are for what occurred on our flight today. Tayana nodded once. I appreciate that, Mr. Coleman. We have a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind, he continued. I want to assure you that appropriate action will be taken. I'm sure it will, Tayana replied, her gaze shifting to Karen. Especially given the circumstances. Coleman cleared his throat nervously. Yes, well, interfering with a federal agent in the performance of their duties is obviously extremely serious. I didn't know, Karen finally spoke, her voice barely audible. How could I have known? Tayana approached the table and sat across from her. For a long moment, she said nothing, just studied the woman who had humiliated her in front of a plane full of people. Ms. Winters, she finally said, that's precisely the point. You didn't know who I was. You didn't know I was a Secret Service agent protecting a senator. You saw a black woman in a hoodie and made assumptions. Karen flinched at the directness of Tayana's words. The problem isn't that you treated a federal agent this way, Tayana continued. It's that you would treat any passenger this way. My badge doesn't make me more deserving of basic respect than anyone else. Tears welled in Karen's eyes. I'm not racist. Tayana finished for her. Maybe you don't think so. But your actions tell a different story. The room fell silent as the weight of Tayana's words settled over everyone present. Coleman spoke again. Agent Brooks, what can we do to make this right? Tayana considered the question. That depends on what Ms. Winters learns from this experience. All eyes turned to Karen, who looked smaller than she had on the plane. I'm sorry, she whispered. I truly am. I don't know what to say. Then listen, Tayana replied. Because what happens next isn't about punishing you. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to someone else, someone without a badge to protect them. Outside the conference room, Tayana could see more airline executives arriving, along with what appeared to be legal counsel. This was becoming a bigger situation than she'd anticipated. Her phone buzzed, a message from Jasmine. The video has 2 million views already. People are calling you the Secret Service angel for how calmly you handled it all. Are you okay? Tayana put the phone away without responding. Whether she was okay wasn't important right now. What mattered was what happened next and making sure it changed something. 2 days later, Tayana sat in the office of Secret Service Director Marshall, finishing her official account of the incident. So after they escorted Ms. Winters out, you completed your assignment protecting Senator Harrison? Director Marshall asked, reviewing her report. Yes, sir. Despite the unforeseen complications, the protective mission was successful. Marshall nodded, then placed the report on his desk. The video has over 30 million views now. You've become something of an internet sensation, Agent Brooks. Tayana shifted uncomfortably. That wasn't my intention, sir. Of course not. But it happened nonetheless. He studied her thoughtfully. How are you holding up? It was the first time anyone had really asked about her well-being since the incident. Tayana considered the question carefully. I'm fine, sir. That's your professional answer, Marshall observed. I'm asking you, Tayana, not Agent Brooks. She sighed. Honestly, I'm tired. Not just from that day, but from all the days like it. The constant need to prove myself. The extra scrutiny. The assumptions people make before I even speak. Marshall nodded slowly. I can't pretend to fully understand what you experience. But I do know you're one of our best agents. What happened on that flight was unacceptable. Thank you, sir. Atlantic Airways has reached out to us directly, Marshall continued. Their CEO wants to meet with you personally. Tayana raised an eyebrow. For damage control? Possibly. But I think there's more to it. Marshall handed her a folder. They're proposing a comprehensive bias training program for all their staff, and they want your input. Tayana opened the folder, scanning the proposal. It looked substantial, not just a performative gesture, but a serious commitment to systemic change. This is unexpected, she admitted. They're calling it the Brooks Protocol, Marshall said with a small smile. Apparently, you made quite an impression. Before Tayana could respond, there was a knock at the door. Marshall's assistant entered. Excuse me, Director. Senator Harrison is here to see Agent Brooks. Tayana stood quickly. Senator Harrison. I wasn't aware he was coming. The senator entered, looking more casual than he had on the flight. He extended his hand to Tayana. Agent Brooks. Thank you for seeing me. Of course, Senator. Is everything all right? Harrison nodded. I spoke on the Senate floor this morning about what I witnessed on that flight. About your extraordinary professionalism in the face of blatant discrimination. Tayana felt her cheeks warm. Sir, that wasn't necessary. I disagree, Harrison said firmly. What I saw wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a window into what happens every day across this country. And the fact that it happened to someone wearing a federal badge, someone protecting me, makes it all the more outrageous. Marshall cleared his throat. The senator has proposed additional funding for diversity initiatives within federal law enforcement. It's the least I can do, Harrison added. Agent Brooks, your restraint that day probably prevented a serious incident. If that man had reached me while the plane was in chaos, Tayana nodded, understanding the security implications. I was just doing my job, Senator. With excellence, Harrison replied. And at personal cost. After the senator left, Tayana returned to her desk to find a small crowd of colleagues waiting. They fell silent as she approached. What's going on? She asked cautiously. Agent Michael stepped forward. We wanted you to see this. He handed her his phone. On the screen was a news article, Atlantic Airways flight attendant terminated. Airline announces major changes to anti-bias training. Below it was another headline, Secret Service agents' dignity under fire sparks national conversation on racial bias. Tayana scrolled through the articles, feeling strangely detached from the person they described. The comments section was filled with support, outrage on her behalf, and stories from people who had experienced similar treatment. You're trending on Twitter, a younger agent said. People are calling you a hero. Tayana handed the phone back. I'm not a hero. I was just doing my job under difficult circumstances. That's what makes you one, Michaels replied. Most people would have lost their cool. You didn't. Later that day, Tayana received an email from Atlantic Airways CEO, confirming their meeting and adding a personal note. Your response to this situation has been extraordinary. Rather than seeking punishment, you've advocated for education and change. We have much to learn from you. As she prepared to leave for the day, her phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. Hey, Secret Service Angel. My video hit 40M views. News wants interviews. What should I tell them? Tayana smiled and typed back. Tell them the water was cold, but change is coming. And it feels warm. For the first time since the incident, Tayana felt something beyond exhaustion and resignation. It wasn't quite hope. She'd been in this work too long for naive optimism. But it was a recognition that sometimes the right moment captured in the right way could create ripples far beyond one flight, one incident, one person. She tucked her badge into her pocket and headed home, knowing tomorrow would bring new challenges and perhaps new opportunities to make a difference. 1 month after the incident, Tayana stood at the back of a large training room at Atlantic Airways headquarters. 50 flight attendants, pilots, and customer service representatives sat facing a presentation screen with a now infamous video played. Even now, watching herself sit motionless as water cascaded over her head made Tayana's stomach tighten. The room was completely silent except for the audio from the video, Karen's false apology, the gasps from passengers, the stunned silence that followed. When the video ended, the airline's new chief diversity officer, Dr. Elaine Washington, addressed the group. What you just witnessed was a textbook example of bias in action, she said. Today, we have a unique opportunity to hear directly from the person who experienced it. Please welcome Secret Service Agent Tayana Brooks. As Tayana walked to the front of the room, she felt the weight of every gaze. This wasn't her normal role. She was trained to blend in, to protect others while remaining unnoticed. Now, she was the focus of attention. "Thank you, Dr. Washington," Tayana began. "I'm not here to shame anyone today. I'm here because what happened to me happens to people every day. People without badges, without viral videos, without the protection of a federal agency behind them." She paused, making eye contact with different people in the audience. "The difference is I was trained to handle high-pressure situations. My job requires me to remain calm when everything around me is chaos. But no one should need Secret Service training to be treated with basic dignity." For the next 20 minutes, Tayana spoke about her experiences, not just on the flight, but throughout her career. She explained how bias affects security assessments, how snap judgments based on appearance can create blind spots. The irony, she noted, is that Ms. Winter's behavior actually created a security risk. Her actions drew attention to me and nearly compromised my ability to protect my asset. After the presentation, several attendees approached Tayana with questions and, in some cases, tearful apologies for times they realized they might have made similar assumptions. As the room cleared, Richard Coleman, the airline CEO, approached her. "Agent Brooks, the Brooks Protocol training has already been implemented across 3 of our major hubs. Early feedback has been overwhelmingly positive." Tayana nodded. "I'm glad to hear it. Though I still find it strange to have my name attached to something like this." "You earned it," Coleman replied. "Not many people would have responded the way you did, turning a horrible experience into an opportunity for education." Tayana's phone buzzed with a notification. It was another message from Jasmine, who had become something of a friend since the incident. "You won't believe this. Karen Winters reached out to me." Tayana frowned. She hadn't heard anything about Karen since learning of her termination. "What did she want?" "To talk to you," came Jasmine's reply. "Says she's been in intensive therapy and has something important to say. I told her I'd ask you." Tayana put her phone away, unsure how to respond. Part of her had no desire to revisit that interaction. Another part was curious about what Karen might have learned. Later that evening, Tayana arrived home to find a package waiting at her door. Inside was a letter from Senator Harrison along with a framed congressional commendation. The letter read, "Agent Brooks, your conduct that day showed the best of what public service should be. The legislation we discussed has passed committee and will provide funding for expanded bias training across all federal law enforcement agencies. Your experience has already changed policies that will affect thousands of agents. Thank you for your service and your example." Tayana placed the framed commendation on her mantle, next to her Secret Service oath of office. It felt surreal how one terrible day had somehow launched a cascade of positive changes. Her phone rang. It was Director Marshall. "Brooks, good news. The president has requested you for his detail next week." Tayana sat up straighter. "The president's detail? Sir, that's well-deserved," Marshall finished for her. "Your handling of the airline incident demonstrated exactly the kind of judgment and restraint we need in close protection work." After the call ended, Tayana sat in silence, processing everything. In the span of a month, her career had accelerated in ways she couldn't have imagined. All because she'd maintained her composure during one of the most humiliating moments of her life. Her phone buzzed again with another message from Jasmine. "So what should I tell Karen?" Tayana stared at the message for a long moment, then typed her reply. "Tell her I'll meet her. Someone once told me that what matters isn't punishing people, but making sure they learn." The response came seconds later. "You're amazing, you know that? Secret Service angel for real." Tayana smiled despite herself. The nickname was ridiculous, but it had stuck. Sometimes at headquarters, she'd catch colleagues whispering it when they thought she couldn't hear. She wondered what Karen Winters wanted to say, whether it would be a genuine reflection or a self-serving attempt at redemption. Either way, Tayana would listen. That was part of the job, too. Assessing people, understanding motivations, finding truth beneath the surface. As she prepared for bed, Tayana caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She looked different somehow. Not just the new confidence in her posture or the slight smile that came more easily now. There was something in her eyes, a certainty that hadn't been there before. She had always been good at her job. Now she realized she was making a difference beyond the protection detail, beyond the badge, and that was worth all the cold water in the world. The cafe was quiet for a Wednesday afternoon. Tayana arrived early, selecting a table with a clear view of the entrance and her back to the wall, habits from years of protection work. She ordered a black coffee and waited. Karen Winters entered precisely on time, looking nothing like the confident flight attendant from the plane. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of the tight bun. She wore jeans and a sweater rather than a uniform. Without makeup, she appeared older, more vulnerable. She spotted Tayana immediately, but hesitated at the door, as if gathering courage. Finally, she approached the table. "Agent Brooks," she said softly, "thank you for agreeing to meet me." Tayana gestured to the chair across from her. "Ms. Winters." Karen sat down, hands fidgeting with her purse strap. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "Honestly, I wasn't either," Tayana admitted. "But here we are." A heavy silence settled between them. Karen looked like she might cry. "I've rehearsed what to say 100 times," Karen finally spoke. "But now nothing sounds right. Just speak honestly," Tayana suggested. "That's all I'm looking for." Karen nodded, taking a deep breath. "After the incident, after I lost my job, I was angry. At you, at the airline, at everyone but myself. I felt my life had been destroyed over one bad day." Tayana listened without interrupting. "My sister finally sat me down and made me watch all the videos. Not just the one that went viral, but the one showing how I treated you from the beginning. How I ignored you, accidentally spilled that first drink, checked your boarding pass when I didn't check anyone else's." Karen's voice cracked. "I didn't see it. I really didn't see what I was doing. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. That's often how bias works," Tayana said. "It's in the small things we don't even notice we're doing." Karen wiped away a tear. "I've been in therapy 3 times a week. I've been reading books about implicit bias, taking workshops. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. And what have you learned?" Karen met Tayana's gaze directly for the first time. "That I've been carrying attitudes I didn't even recognize. That I've probably been treating people differently for years without admitting it to myself. That I'm responsible for more harm than I can ever really know." Tayana nodded slowly. "That's a difficult realization. I'm not asking for forgiveness," Karen continued, "or for my job back. That's not why I wanted to see you. Why did you want to see me?" "Because..." Karen hesitated. "Because I needed you to know that what happened that day changed me. And because I wanted to thank you." Tayana raised an eyebrow. "Thank me? You could have pressed charges. You could have sued. You could have destroyed me completely. Instead, you pushed for education and training. You turned what I did into something constructive." Karen pulled a folded paper from her purse and placed it on the table. "I've been volunteering with this organization. They work with young women of color interested in aviation careers. I'm not trying to prove I'm not racist or anything like that. I just want to be part of making the industry better than it was when I was in it." Tayana glanced at the paper, a volunteer certificate from Wings for All, a respected nonprofit. "That's meaningful work," Tayana acknowledged. "It's a start," Karen replied. "A small one." The conversation paused as a server brought Karen a cup of tea. When they were alone again, Tayana leaned forward slightly. "Can I ask you something, Ms. Winters?" "Of course." "What went through your mind when you poured that water on me?" Karen flinched at the directness of the question. For a moment, Tayana thought she might deflect or offer excuses. Instead, she closed her eyes, seeming to search within herself. "Power," she finally said. "I felt powerful. I decided you were troublesome, that you didn't belong in first class, that you needed to be put in your place. When you challenged that narrative by being composed and articulate, it made me angrier." She opened her eyes, shame evident in her expression. "It's ugly to admit, but in that moment, I wanted to humiliate you. To show everyone that I was in control." Tayana nodded, appreciating the painful honesty. Thank you for that truth. Can I ask you something now? Karen requested. Go ahead. How did you stay so calm? Even before you revealed you were Secret Service. How did you not react? Tayana considered the question. Part of it was my training, but part of it was survival instinct. As a black woman, I learned early that expressing anger, even justified anger, often gets used against you. Karen looked down at her tea. I never had to think about that. No, you didn't, Tayana agreed. That's part of the problem. The conversation shifted then, becoming less about that specific incident and more about the broader issues it represented. For nearly an hour, they talked, really talked, about race, about assumptions, about the small daily moments that shaped their very different experiences of the world. As they prepared to leave, Karen asked, do you think anything good will come from what happened? Tayana thought about the Brooks Protocol being implemented across the airline industry, about the legislation Senator Harrison had championed, about the training sessions she'd been conducting. Yes, she said, I do. Karen nodded, relief visible in her expression. That helps. Not that it makes what I did okay. It doesn't, Tayana confirmed. No. But knowing some good might come from my worst moment, it helps me keep doing the work. They parted ways outside the cafe, not as friends, but perhaps as two people who understood something important about change and accountability. As Tayana walked to her car, her phone rang. It was Director Marshall. Brooks, how quickly can you get to headquarters? The president wants to meet you before the protection detail next week. Tayana stopped walking. The president wants to meet me? Apparently, he saw the airline video and your follow-up work with the training program. He's interested in expanding similar initiatives across federal agencies. Tayana found herself smiling. I'll be there in 30 minutes, sir. As she drove toward headquarters, Tayana reflected on the strange path that had led her here. One ugly moment on an airplane had somehow created ripples that continued to spread outward, touching lives and policies in ways she couldn't have imagined. The world hadn't changed overnight. There would still be Karens. There would still be bias and discrimination and painful moments. But something had shifted, in her, in others, in the systems themselves. And for now, that was enough. 6 months later, Tayana stood in the back of the East Room of the White House, scanning the crowd with practiced precision. As part of the president's security detail, she learned to blend professional vigilance with an appearance of casual attention. The room was filled with aviation industry executives, legislators, civil rights leaders, and press. At the podium, the president was speaking about the Equitable Transportation Act, legislation inspired in part by what the media still occasionally called the airline incident. This comprehensive bill does more than just address bias in our transportation systems, the president was saying. It creates accountability mechanisms, training requirements, and reporting structures that will help ensure every American is treated with dignity when they travel. Tayana maintained her professional demeanor, but inside, a warm sense of accomplishment spread through her chest. Senator Harrison caught her eye from his seat near the front and gave her a subtle nod of acknowledgement. The president continued, I'd like to recognize someone whose experience and subsequent actions helped inspire this legislation. Though her Secret Service duties prevent her from stepping forward today, Agent Tayana Brooks has turned a moment of injustice into a movement for change. A murmur went through the crowd as people tried to locate her in the room. Tayana remained expressionless, though her colleagues in a detail gave her quick glances of pride. After the ceremony, as guests mingled during the reception, Director Marshall approached her. Quite a legacy you're building, Brooks, he said quietly. First the airline protocols, now federal legislation. Just doing my job, sir, she replied. Marshall smiled. Which job? Protecting officials or changing the world? Before she could answer, an aide approached to inform them the president wished to speak with Tayana privately. She followed the aide to a small study adjacent to the East Room. The president was waiting, accompanied only by his chief of staff. Agent Brooks, he greeted her warmly. I've been wanting to thank you personally. Thank you, Mr. President, but I was just performing my duties. We both know it was more than that, he replied. Your response to that situation, your dignity, your professionalism, and especially what you've done since, that goes beyond duty. The president gestured for her to sit. I have a proposition for you. We're creating a new position within the Department of Homeland Security, Special Advisor on Equity in Federal Law Enforcement. The role would involve developing training programs, reviewing policies, and helping agencies better serve diverse communities. Tayana blinked in surprise. Sir, I'm honored, but I'm a field agent, not an administrator. Which is precisely why you're the right person, the president replied. This isn't about pushing papers. It's about bringing real-world experience to systems that need reform. Would I be leaving the Secret Service? She asked, uncertain how she felt about that prospect. Not entirely. You'd have dual appointment, maintaining your agent status while leading this new initiative. Director Marshall has already approved the arrangement. Should you accept? Tayana's mind raced. It was an unprecedented opportunity, a chance to make changes at a systemic level. I'd like some time to consider it if that's possible, she said. Of course. Take the weekend. We can talk again on Monday. As she left the White House that evening, Tayana received a text from Jasmine, who would become a close friend. Saw the president shouted you out. Secret Service angel goes to Washington. Raising hands medium skin. Tayana smiled and sent back a quick reply before getting into her car. The drive home gave her time to think. The president's offer was tempting, but it would fundamentally change the trajectory of her career. She joined the Secret Service to be in the field, not to become a public figure or policy advisor. Yet she couldn't deny the impact she'd already had. The Brooks Protocol had been adopted by 3 major airlines. The training sessions she'd helped design were showing measurable results in reducing complaint incidents. At a stoplight, her phone rang through the car's speaker. It was her mother. Baby, I saw you on TV. Well, I didn't see you exactly, but they talked about you. Tayana smiled. Hey, Mom. Yeah, it was a big day. I'm so proud of you, her mother said, her voice warm. You turned something ugly into something beautiful. That's who you've always been. I learned from the best, Tayana replied. Hey, Mom, can I ask you something? If you had a chance to do something completely different from what you'd planned, but it might help a lot of people, would you take it? Her mother didn't hesitate. Is this about that new position they're offering you? Tayana laughed. How did you know about that? Baby, I worked in government for 30 years. I hear things. Now answer my question. Is this something you want to do? I don't know, Tayana admitted. It's not what I trained for. Maybe not, her mother said thoughtfully. But maybe it's what all your experiences have been preparing you for. After they hung up, Tayana continued driving, her mother's words echoing in her mind. Perhaps this was why she had endured everything, the extra scrutiny, the constant need to prove herself, even that humiliating moment on the plane. Perhaps it had all been leading her here. When she arrived home, she found a package waiting at her door. Inside was a framed photograph of her sitting perfectly still on the airplane as water poured over her head. It had been taken by Jasmine that day, but unlike the viral video screenshots, this image captured something different, a quiet dignity, an unbroken spirit. Attached was a note from Jasmine. Thought you might want this. Not as a reminder of what she did, but of what you did. You changed things just by being yourself. Tayana placed the photo on her mantle, next to her commendations. It was strange to display what had been such a painful moment, but she understood what Jasmine meant. It wasn't about the humiliation. It was about what had come after. Over the weekend, Tayana spoke with several colleagues, mentors, and friends. By Sunday night, her decision was made. Monday morning, she sat across from the president in the Oval Office. I'd like to accept the position, she said. With one condition. The president raised an eyebrow. Which is, the program can't be named after me. No more Brooks Protocols or Brooks Initiatives. The work should stand on its own merits, not because it's attached to a viral moment. The president smiled. That's reasonable. What should we call it instead? Tayana had been thinking about this. The Dignity Project. Because that's what it's really about, ensuring everyone is treated with basic human dignity, regardless of who they are or what they look like. The Dignity Project it is, the president agreed. Welcome aboard, Agent Brooks. Or should I say, Special Advisor Brooks? Agent is fine, Tayana replied with a small smile. It reminds me where I came from. As she left the Oval Office, Tayana felt a sense of purpose unlike anything she'd experienced before. Her path had changed in ways she never could have predicted, all because of one flight, one moment of indignity met with unwavering composure. She thought about Karen Winters, who was now helping young women of color pursue careers in aviation, about the airlines implementing new training programs, about the legislation that would affect millions of travelers. And she thought about all the people who would never know her name but whose lives might be just a little bit better, a little bit more dignified, because of the changes now rippling outward. That was worth everything. The humiliation, the struggle, the spotlight she'd never sought. That was worth showing up, standing tall, and continuing the work. That was dignity. That's the end of the story. Do you think the flight attendant truly learned her lesson? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. If you've made it this far, you're clearly into stories that are different. You won't find another channel telling stories like us. Go ahead and subscribe, then click another episode and keep watching.